I'm going to read Ties That Bind, Ties That Break, a novel by Lindsay Nemioka. Prologue. I found it hard to manage my high-heeled shoes without tripping or twisting my ankle. Wearing them was almost as bad as having bound feet. No, that wasn't true. Nothing could be as bad as having bound feet. I also had to remember to take small steps so as not to enlarge the side slits in my silk cheongsam. After several years of wearing a full skirt, it wasn't easy getting used to this narrow, slinky dress. The cheongsam, with its high, stiff collar and side buttons, was actually based on the Manchu tunic Chinese women used to wear over their trousers before the revolution. But this was 1925, and women nowadays wore only long silk stockings under the tunic instead of trousers. And the tunic itself fitted the body much more tightly. Grandmother would have had hysterics if she had seen me in this outfit. I was only 19, but I chose to wear the cheongsam and the high heels because I was the wife of the proprietor and I had my dignity to maintain. Proprietor, and I had my dignity to maintain. As usual, I looked around the restaurant, checking to see that everything was running smoothly. That was when I saw him. The face was familiar, but the figure and the clothing were not. I stared at the young Chinese man dressed in a Western suit who had come into the restaurant and was looking around. There could be no doubt about it. Those raised eyebrows belonged to Liu Hanwei, my former fiancé. A huge bubble of laughter rose in my throat, and I wanted to shout a greeting, but I had to restrain myself. Otherwise, I might lose the respect of the waiters, who were all older than I was. I walked up to Hanwei. Would you care to sit down? I asked politely in Mandarin. It had been 3 years since I had left China, but I still remembered my Chinese. Hanwei almost jumped in surprise. He opened and closed his mouth several times. That too was familiar. Ellen? He whispered. Are you really Tao Ellen? I'm now Mrs. Zhao, I said, giving him the Mandarin form of my married name. My husband owns this restaurant. Stunned, Hanwei sank into the nearest chair. You are married? He croaked. I nodded. I summoned a waiter who ran over quickly. I gave him orders in rapid Cantonese. We'll start with some shark fin soup, add some bits of chicken and ham, then half a roast duck, I think, and some prawns and ginger sauce. Maybe a steamed carp too. If the waiter was surprised by the lavish order for just one guest, he refrained from commenting. Even though I was not much older than his daughter, I was still this owner's wife. When your employers returned to Nanjing, I went to see if you had returned with them, said Hanwei. Imagine my shock when they told me you were staying on in America. I poured a cup of tea for him. The Warners didn't need me as a nanny anymore. Both children were old enough to attend school in Nanjing. Hanwei drank his tea silently. But you could have found work with another American missionary family, he said finally. Lots of them would be glad to have a fluent English speaker to care for their children. Maybe I got tired of being a nanny, I said lightly. Actually, that wasn't true. I loved children and enjoyed taking care of them. Anyway, tell me about yourself. What are you doing here in America? He explained that he had been studying at the University of Illinois for more than 3 years. I am majoring in chemistry and I'll graduate the year after next. If you're still studying in Illinois, what are you doing in San Francisco? I asked. I was on my way home for a visit, replied Hanwei. I heard my mother was very sick. At the mention of his mother, Mrs. Leo, I felt a touch of bitterness. She was the one who had broken my engagement to Hanwei. But my bitterness didn't go deep. I have a few days to kill before my ship sails, explained Hanwei. The University of Illinois is in a small college town without a good Chinese restaurant, and I really missed Chinese food. So when I was passing through San Francisco, I thought I'd drop into Chinatown for some good food. He paused and then said softly, "The last thing I expected was to run into you." There was a pause. To break the heavy silence, I asked, "What do you plan to do when you graduate? Will you go back to China and find work?" He nodded. "Yes, I already have a job waiting for me. There's a great need in China for people with technical knowledge." The experience had been good for him, I thought. Hanwei was no longer the soft, spoiled son of a wealthy family. He was a young man ready to apply himself for a job. "Your parents will be really surprised at the change in you," I said. The soup arrived, and Hanwei's eyes brightened when I ladled some into a bowl for him. The other dishes followed quickly, and he became too busy to talk. I had to suppress a smile as I watched him digging in. At times he didn't even wait for me to serve him, but reached into the platters himself. He must have been really starved for Chinese food. Eventually, Hanwei slowed in his eating and began to pick at the bits of carp near the bones. "Not only did I change," he asked, "but my parents have changed too. You'd be surprised at how modern they've become in some respects. Modern enough to accept unbound feet." I couldn't help asking. Hanwei carefully put down his chopsticks. He stared for some moments in his teacup before replying. When he finally looked up at me, I saw that his eyes were full of sorrow and regret. "Why didn't you wait, Ellen? What made you run away to that American family?" What made me run away? I thought back to the first time I met Hanwei. Yes, that was when it all started. I was almost 5 years old and he was 7.